Thank you, Nadia, and thank you so much for having me here. Hi, everybody. I'm Leslie Alore. I am the Senior Vice President of Marketing at a B2B software company called Flexera. And I have been in the marketing role in various forms and formats, ranging from marketing operations to revenue ops to demand gen, field marketing, you name it, and some jobs outside of marketing as well. And I have always been incredibly passionate about marketing analytics, specifically how we can show the impact of marketing to real business outcomes. Because I genuinely believe that marketing is a function that directly contributes to revenue outcomes, in addition to all the indirect, beautiful outputs that we help to support. So I want to help you talk about how to do all of those things, indirect and direct impact. And for some reason, as marketers, we're generally not very good at that. We are professional storytellers, and we are so good at telling the story of our company to our customers and to the market. We're great at crafting narratives that explain the value of our businesses, services, or products and offerings. And yet, for some reason, we're not great when it comes to telling stories about ourselves and the value that we bring. In fact, oftentimes we're actually really terrible at it. And what's interesting about that is our internal stakeholders, like sales teams, customer success teams, finance teams, our executives, and even our board members, they want to hear that story because they actually really care about us succeeding as a marketing function. They care way more about us succeeding than our customers do. So why do we often feel so underappreciated, misunderstood, or in some cases, even marginalized by the companies that we work for? Is it because we're doing it wrong? I mean, maybe. Marketing is hard and we are not perfect. There is always more that we could be doing and ways we could be doing things better. That's for sure. But how do you know if you're doing it right if you don't actually know what success looks like for your business? Maybe we actually are doing everything right, but we're not telling our story in a way that is relatable to our audience or relevant to them, right? Sales teams, finance teams, executives, they have a different frame of reference and a point of view. And telling a great story is all about understanding the frame of reference and the point of view of your audience. So, how are we doing with that? Let's first talk about relatability. And I don't know about you, but I wish I could relate to this lady. I cannot. This might be something that you can relate to, though. I love this one, and people always laugh when they see it, but it is absolutely true. And most people today, whether they know anything at all about marketing, understand that what you do in a digital world, or even your physical world, if you have digital devices listening to you, are impacting the way that you are receiving and experiencing marketing as consumers. The marketing that we do in B2B actually shouldn't work that differently. So when you're starting to tell a story about marketing, start from a place of relatability, and most people can relate to how they experience marketing as consumers. Here's another example. Who knows what this is? Okay, everybody knows that this is Netflix. Now the question is, do most people know why they have different profiles? Of course they do. They know that they care about logging into their own profile and not sharing a profile with their kids because when they log in, they want to see content that is interesting and relevant to them, not get flooded with a bunch of kiddie flicks when really they want to watch some adult programming, right? And I don't mean adult programming. But what most people probably don't know is even when we are being presented with the same content, oftentimes Netflix is presenting that content differently to us. This is really smart marketing because essentially Netflix has one library that is the same thing. It's essentially got the same product for everybody. But what it is showing you is not only the content that's going to be most interesting and relevant to you, but it's also presenting that content in a different way. So here's an example where we have my husband's profile, that's the panda, my profile, the superhero, obviously, and we've got my stepdad here because we share an account. Don't tell Netflix. And what you're seeing is both my husband and I are being suggested Ozark. But you also notice that the way they've represented this is very different. Netflix seems to believe that showing a very intense Jason Bateman is going to be more interesting to my husband, whereas what it is showing me is this, indication of some sort of intense interpersonal dialogue, because they think that's what's going to resonate. Similarly, they're suggesting Bridgerton to me, again, that intrigue and intense interpersonal relationship visual. And apparently my stepdad will be interested in Bridgerton because he likes ladies on horses. So what's the point of this? It's all about relatability. So now let's bring this back to business and talk about something we can probably all relate to. Welcome to the quarterly business review. All right, QBRs, we all know them and love them. We've all shown up to a QBR at some point in our careers with a slide that looks something like this. All righty, marketing, what did we do? How are we performing? Well, we had 8,500 visitors to our website. All right, 501 people downloaded something from our resources center. 807 new leads converted with a 31% conversion rate. We launched 14 new campaigns and 45 people registered to our July 4th event. Want to know what most of your colleagues are thinking when they see this? Yeah, seriously. What do these metrics mean? What story do they tell? Are they good? Are they bad? Do they align to the objectives of the business? Are they making an impact to those objectives? Are things getting better or worse? If the metrics don't answer those business questions, they are not metrics that matter. Okay, so we're going to dive into how do we get to metrics that matter, because the result of failing to do this, to show the metrics, to contextualize them in a way that is relevant to what matters to your business and the audience you're speaking to, often results in misalignment as well as distrust between marketing and the rest of the business. We appear disconnected. Okay, and my very, very favorite marketunist paints this picture really well here. So what do we do about this? The good news is this is a very solvable problem. The die is not cast permanently. I think you guys are here to get some of that real practical guidance, so that I can show you how great you are and so that you can show your organization how great you are. So let's do that. The first thing to do, and this is taking steps way, way back, is you need to define the unique role of marketing in your organization. Make sure that people fundamentally understand and agree that the business needs these things and that marketing is indeed the function responsible for these things. So where I like to start, and this may end up being different for different organizations, but this is a good starting point for most B2B organizations, is marketing's role is to do three things: to shape market-leading brand perception, and that may take a different shape at every company. That might even take a different shape in terms of how you prioritize this year over year. But generally speaking, this is, you might call this the brand side of the house, but it's also going to encompass things like analyst relations and media relations, and possibly even communication strategies for partners and others who matter to you. Drive recurring revenue growth is the one that everybody thinks of when they think of marketing. And yeah, super, super important. But what does that mean? What is marketing's role? Be specific. So in this case, I'm saying it's about fueling predictable ARR growth. How? Through account-based precision demand marketing. Take that a step further, and for us, that means across all of our routes to market, aligned to our go-to-market strategy. And finally, create amazing experiences. And that feels very broad again. So let's take that down and be specific. In this example, deliver amazing marketing experiences means supporting the customer's jobs to be done across all stages and touch points of the customer lifecycle. Now, I have a firm belief that marketers absolutely have a role to play in the entire customer lifecycle. Our job is not done just because somebody has bought something. And if you're in a business that has any form of subscriptions or recurring revenue, that means that selling to a customer once isn't good enough. You have to do it again and again. So that customer experience does matter. And that is how I talk about this, which is about establishing your scope. Do you, as a marketing organization, play only in the buy stage, or do you have a role to play beyond that? If you're in B2B software, for example, or anything that's subscription based where you need to resell, you should really stake a claim to your scope to be beyond the buy stage. Buying people understand. It's about helping customers find and choose the best solution to drive their business outcomes. Okay, most people get that. And we're going to get specific about how you measure that. In some organizations, though, you might need to also in marketing be able to support the ownership stage, helping customers realize the full value of what they purchase. So at my company, we say it's realizing the full value of a customer's Flexera solutions to drive those business outcomes. Are they getting what they bought it for? Okay, because if they're not going to renew, and they're certainly not going to buy more. And then finally, there's an advocacy component, and most marketing teams have some level of responsibility for this. That's about sharing and celebrating our customer success, and that takes the shape of things like references programs and case studies, customer advisory boards, or user groups. Okay, so get aligned on your scope, and then you can move into what are the metrics that matter. You need to define the most important and relevant metrics that align to these categories that represent, what you are uniquely positioned to do. That doesn't mean that all of the metrics themselves will be unique to marketing. Marketing should be taking responsibility for metrics that are shared across multiple functions in many cases. But first, you really need to understand what matters to the business. So let's go a little deeper. And before we get to the numbers, let's talk about the why. We need to start from a place of alignment to the business. And I really have come to believe deeply in these 6 guiding principles. Okay, so let's step through these. Number 1, marketing goals are directly tied to business goals. We celebrate victory when the business does. Let me give you a perfect example of where this often goes wrong. Let's say that you set a target for marketing that is you need to source 20% of all pipeline. Okay, fine, perfectly acceptable. Now let's say you have you understand the business's pipeline goal, and at the end of Q1, you have sourced 20% of the pipeline. Excellent. But the business didn't create enough pipeline. 20% of not enough pipeline is not something to celebrate. So even though marketing proportionally contributed what it said it would, overall, we didn't create enough. So we didn't hit the goal. So be careful here. This is why aligning to the business goals matter. Marketing and sales, number 2. Marketing and sales work together to drive the same outcomes. I never entertain conversations about credit, ever. I shut those down every single time. We need to jointly focus on results. All boats rise when the tide rises, okay? And we need to be focusing on what does it take to rise all the boats. Marketing is planful, proactive, and performance-driven, which means that we don't commit random acts of marketing. Now, one thing I will caution you on is sometimes marketing can appear so planful that it gets in the way of just getting stuff done. That's not what I'm talking about here. I don't mean spend 6 months planning and then 6 months building in order to run a 6-month campaign. A lot of businesses cannot operate like that. You need to align your planfulness to the cadence of your business, but it does mean that there's intent behind the things that you choose to do. Okay, the things you choose, the tactics you execute are designed in service of the outcomes. And so you need to know what those outcomes need to be first. Number 4, Marketing supports the entire customer lifecycle. We already talked about this, but I get really specific when I talk to sales leaders in particular about this to make it very clear. We don't just toss a lead over the fence. This is not a relay race. Just like there's not one magical moment where somebody has like achieved the pinnacle of marketing readiness, we hand it over to sales and say, good luck. No. We engage continuously through the entire buyer cycle. Number 5, marketing measures what matters most and continuously optimizes. So this is about not just getting something out in market and moving on. It's about choosing things that you can measure and evaluate and optimize. And I often talk to my team about a concept I call do less better. We oftentimes talk about do more with less. I would challenge you to reframe your thinking to you don't need to do more with less. You need to do less better. Because if you can be more productive and efficient, you don't need to do as many things. And then number 6, marketing focuses on scale. So sales can focus on the one-to-one and the one-to-few. And I find this to be very powerful. And this resonates very highly, not just with sales teams, but often customer success teams. Those teams, those customer-facing professionals are talking to one customer at a time. Our value comes because we can scale where they cannot. We provide the air cover in the moments in between the customer conversations. Okay? These principles are to be embraced and shared not just across your marketing team, but across all your stakeholders. And I guarantee that this is going to resonate with sales and with leadership more broadly. At first, it may surprise them, actually. I've had people kind of react like, whoa, okay. But I would challenge anybody to actually disagree with any of these points. They won't. It's so logical, and it is really an all-in for the win type of approach. Nobody's going to argue with this. The key is you have to actually act on it. So let's talk about how. So first, the metrics that matter. I break this up into 3 categories, okay? Oftentimes marketers start with the things that they do, the tasks, the activities that we're executing. We all like to feel like we're checking a lot of boxes and we can show a whole laundry list of stuff we're doing. Okay, that's risky because you're doing the things and then you're trying to figure out how to prove that the things were the good things. This is how you end up with that QBR slide we talked about. Instead, start with strategic targets, then move on to operational KPIs, and then tactical KPIs. The strategic targets align you to the business. These are the metrics through which business is measuring its success. Okay. And you'll also notice I call out here that these are the metrics that you talk to the board and the executives about. And generally speaking, only these. The operational KPIs are the measures that are the leading indicators, the most important and compelling leading indicators to whether you're on track to achieving those strategic targets. And marketing and sales need to be aligned on those, and marketing and sales conversations often happen here. Tactical KPIs help marketers specifically understand whether the things that we're doing are performing at the level that we need them to yield those other results. And I generally believe that tactical KPIs belong almost exclusively in the world of marketing conversations. There are exceptions to that. When there are really abnormal things happening in a market, let's say right now we're all seeing this really significant downward pressure on organic traffic to websites because of the emergence of AI and LLMs and how people are using AI rather than going to websites. Okay, when there's something really material happening in the market, that can rise to the level of a strategic conversation. But generally speaking, things like website visits, tactical. Thou shalt never have that conversation with a seller or an executive. Okay. So to get to the strategic targets, you need to start with the strategic business objectives and then work your way down. When you do this, you will naturally be able to cascade and select the right KPIs to focus on. So, let's say at your company, your North Star goals are focused on annual revenue, EBITDA, improving your customer retention, and employee engagement. Those are the goals coming from your executive organization. Okay. Now you might look at this and think these are not all relevant to marketing. I would challenge you to say they are, but in different ways. So we'll start with the most obvious one. Annual revenue obviously lends itself to our commercial targets. Commercial targets are the goals that your go-to-market team collectively are carrying. These usually manifest in something like new bookings goal, a pipeline creation goal, and maybe a win rate. Sometimes the win rate is implied, but let's say these are the ones that we kind of put, write down. So when we think about what these mean for marketing, that means that marketing must understand and carry and work toward all of those commercial targets plus our slice of the pie. So our slice of the pie is going to be contribution to new bookings, contribution to pipeline creation, and contribution to pipeline acceleration. Or you might call this pipeline progression, depending upon the terminology you use in your company. Okay. I do want to also point out that I've expressed these goals as dollar values. And I have in parentheses put the percentage so that it's generally understood. It's easy and fast to understand what percentage of that total new bookings is marketing going to aim to contribute to. That's important. But the goal isn't the percentage. The goal is the value, because we already talked about 65% of not enough bookings is not a good thing. It's still not enough. Okay. So you heard me say these words, marketing contribution, and you're probably thinking, what is that? Marketing contribution is not some of these things that you might be more familiar with. You've probably heard the terms marketing influenced, marketing sourced, or marketing generated. Marketing contribution is not exactly the same as any of those things. So we're going to talk about what the difference is. I don't like any of these terms, in fact, because they don't entirely articulate really what you're trying to show here, because they all imply the first one, we'll talk about influence in a second. Marketing sourced and marketing generated imply that we did something entirely on our own as marketing. We were the ultimate source of it. We created the thing. The problem with that is in most organizations, it takes a multitude of things. If we're doing our jobs right, we are pursuing the same accounts and people simultaneous to our sellers, and sometimes simultaneous to partners as well. So to lay claim to having been the source or having generated it almost opens the door for this feeling of conflict with the others who are also doing their part. Marketing influence is actually a pretty good term, and back in the day I would have used it. The reason I shy away from it is because over the years it's kind of been twisted and adapted and to have different meanings, and I think that it's resulted in an erosion of trust in this term. So I just steer clear of it for now. Okay. Before I move on, I also want to call out, this is when we talk about contribution, this is not the same as attribution. Attribution is about how much money do I attribute back to specific things. That's not what we're talking about here. Okay. So just like kill the word attribution in your brain. We're not talking about attribution today. Okay. So contribution, what is it? How does it work? Let's start with the timeline. The two most important milestones in any timeline is when an opportunity was created and when an opportunity closes. Okay, those are the two most important things. The timeline that you use surrounding the opportunity creation kind of depends upon the sales cycle of your business. and every business is different. If you're doing enterprise selling of software, for example, and you have a long sales cycle, then your look back window before opportunity creation is going to be longer, because it's reasonable to assume that people are taking much longer in their self-guided journey before they talk to a seller than something that's highly transactional in nature and a fast moving sale. So you need to make a choice that makes the most sense for your business. In this case, I have set a look back window of 180 days or 6 months. And what do I mean by this? What this is saying is we are looking at the total value of pipeline associated with the opportunities where the people or the person or people that are tagged to that opportunity, the contacts, have responded to one or more marketing campaigns in the 6 months leading up to the creation of that opportunity. Okay. So if they've responded to 5 campaigns, all 5 of those campaigns kind of get swooped into that contribution metric. But frankly, it doesn't matter if it was 1 or 21 campaigns. The value of the pipeline doesn't change. If it was, if you've generated, $3 million or not, if the business has generated $3 million in pipeline, and of that, the contacts on those, attach themselves to 1 million of that have contacts on them that responded to marketing campaigns, then the value of marketing contribution is still $1 million. Doesn't matter how many campaigns or how many people. Okay. Then we look at what were the marketing responses? Were there marketing campaign responses, measurable responses from the people who are attached to the opportunity before it is closed? Okay. When those responses that occur in the cycle where the opportunity was open, so after it was open and before it was closed, that's marketing contribution to pipeline progression or pipeline acceleration, whatever term you'd like to use. Okay. The total value of booked dollars, where the people on that booked opportunity responded to one or more marketing campaigns either before the opportunity was created in that look back window or while the opportunity was open, is the total value of marketing contribution to bookings. It's quite simple. Okay. It's important to understand, and that your stakeholders understand, that contribution is an overlay metric, meaning it is being applied to all opportunities where there were people who responded to marketing campaigns, regardless of what you classify as the source of that opportunity. So in your business, you might also have a marketing source metric or an SDR source metric, particularly if the SDRs are part of the marketing organization. And it's perfectly acceptable to look at, okay, how much was sourced by these places? It's important to understand where your pipeline comes from. So this is how much was created by SDRs. This is how much was created by sellers. This is how much was created by our partners. The marketing contribution looks at all the opportunities regardless of source. And you could even slice and dice your reporting and say, this is the value that marketing has contributed to of sales sourced pipeline. So if sales sourced $2 million of pipeline and the people on those opportunities had responded to marketing campaigns before that, and the value of that was, again, the $1 million, what you're saying is marketing contributed $1 million to sales source pipeline. Okay. Now, it is important to think really critically about what classifies a campaign response. And the temptation can be to call everything a campaign response, everything they do. I would challenge you to be a little bit more discerning about that. Think about what was the campaign meant to achieve, what kind of action were you looking to elicit from that campaign? And the intent of that is what you should register as a marketing response. So Campaign membership, meaning we tried to reach out to them, and campaign response, meaning we got them to do the thing we wanted them to do, are two very different things. And you will overinflate your contribution metric if you try to lay claim to, oh, we included this person in a campaign. We tried, we don't have any record that they did a thing, but, it probably influenced them. No, that's not what we're going for here. They have to have responded. Okay. So now that we've established this metric, we need to define the most important and relevant metrics that align to these categories. Okay, so we looked at this before. What we just talked about was the driving the recurring revenue growth box here. So these were the strategic metrics. We looked at the total bookings and the marketing contribution to the bookings. We looked at the total pipeline and the marketing contribution to the pipeline. And we look at marketing contribution to pipeline progression, because those two things together help to result in the bookings. And we put win rate here on here for good measure, because that is in the strategic list of metrics that your sales team are looking at. Okay, so we've established something that's very much aligned here. But how do you know whether what you're doing in marketing is leading to that outcome? So we talked about this. Now we're going to talk about the operational KPIs. And the operational KPIs take things one step further. So we said strategic marketing targets were contribution to new bookings, contribution to new pipeline creation, and contribution to pipeline acceleration or progression. Okay. So when we get down to operational, what are the KPIs that tell us we're on the right track there? This one's probably an easy one for you guys. I would guess that most of you thought immediately of leads. So here we have our monthly MQL target and our conversion rate target. MQLs that tell you, am I getting enough? Conversion tells you, are they good and are they actually converting to pipeline, right? Some of you may not have thought about, and perhaps should, if the nature of your business supports this, operational KPI associated to target accounts. Because if you're just looking at getting a volume of leads, but those leads are not from the accounts that matter to your business, and you have gone so far as to define a very clear set of target accounts aligned to an ICP, then you might still be finding yourself in misalignment to the desired outcomes. So when we think about target accounts, I generally recommend that you set a metric that is about the number of target accounts you are reaching and the number of target accounts you are engaging. And I recommend that all these volume metrics are considered on a monthly basis. Here's why. Let's say that I set a target for the whole year and I say, I have 20,000 target accounts in my business. That's kind of a lot, but let's pretend you do. And you say, okay, I need to reach 5,000 of them throughout the year. Well, was it one time? Was it 3 times that you reached them? What we really should be doing, our job as marketers, is to sustain reach with those who matter, because we all know that it is that, staying in front of them again and again and again, that's going to get to that engagement. And then we need to keep those people engaged, because those accounts matter to us. Keep maintaining that engagement not only helps take them down the path to becoming a new opportunity, but also supports them through that open sales cycle. So make sure that you're not just setting an annual target and going, okay, that's good enough. In this case, I'm recommending monthly for these. Okay. And then the other thing I've got on here, if SDRs sit within your marketing organization, you might also want to have a sales sourced pipeline metric. Sometimes the source metrics might find themselves in the strategic bucket instead of the operational. I challenge that a little bit, because strategically what actually matters to the business is, are you getting enough? It doesn't really, if you're getting enough, nobody really cares where it's coming from. The where it's coming from is indeed a leading indicator of, am I on path to get enough? So that's why I put the pipeline source metrics into the operational bucket. Okay, but that can be debated. Okay, So now we've hit this middle column. We've got our strategic targets and we've got our operational targets. Okay. We got some funny builds here. Sorry about that. But man, we're making great progress. We've touched on the strategic, we've touched on the operational, and now we need to talk about the tactical stuff, because for marketers, this really matters. Okay. The metrics we've discussed so far tell us whether we're on track to achieve the business outcomes, but they don't tell us whether the specific things we're doing and investing in, and when I say investing, I mean our time and our money in, are working and actually effective at driving the leads and the account engagement, etc. Okay. So sometimes tactical KPIs get referred to as vanity metrics. These are the things that marketers need to analyze whether we're actually doing the right things and to maintain and support our plan, execute, optimize motion. But remember, guiding principle number 3 says we do not commit random acts of marketing. So these tactical KPIs will help us ensure that we're not committing random acts. All right. So how should we think about the tactical KPIs and how those connect to the operational? Because I think sometimes we treat these as almost their own worlds, their own like kind of set of benchmarks. So let me try to connect these dots for you. By the way, I want to say this is not a comprehensive list of tactical KPIs. You're going to need to build out a thorough set on the basis of the tactics and channels that you use in your business. I'm just trying to demonstrate how you should be thinking about that connection. Okay. So some of this is obvious. We're used to thinking about, okay, if I'm trying to generate leads, that means that some of that's coming from organic, but some of that's coming from paid. So I know that I need to have tactical KPIs around my paid lead generation. And I need to be thinking about, well, what's my cost per lead? Because I have a budget I have to manage too. What is my click-through rate and my conversion rate? Because those are the things that result in leads. Okay, those are fairly obvious. But when you think about how do I marry that to my accounts? Well, in paid media, how are you reaching your target accounts through your ads? Are you engaging your target accounts through your ads? Because if you're engaging just accounts by volume and they're not the target accounts, or you're not sustaining it, then the tactic isn't serving you. Similarly, when we think about events, we're all used to being like, okay, well, I know that if I have this number of people at events and my registration rate is this and my attendance rate is that, that's going to get me a certain number of leads. We're used to thinking that way. But similarly, are you choosing events that are reaching the right accounts? Does not do us a lot of good if we're spending a whole bunch of money to go to trade shows and, 99% of the people that you're spending time talking to at those trade shows are not your target accounts. So if you're running a really focused target account business, I mean, trade shows might still be valuable for you from a brand perspective, but they're probably not serving that purpose. So that helps you think about that. Similarly, if you're running events and you're inviting people to events, are you getting the right people in accounts? Okay. That's how you start to think about those connections. Tactical metrics ladder up to account-based marketing, whether you think they do or not. So challenge yourselves to think that way if that's something that matters to you. All right. Again, with the weird build. I don't know what happened here, guys. Sorry about that. So we figured out our metrics that matter. We've set targets against them. We are super confident that we know that we focused on the right things. We're going to be able to focus our marketing team on the activities that are going to, yield the outcomes we want. And we're going to measure so that we can constantly optimize and improve, because we are amazing. Like, we're so good at this. We are actually really, really good at this. It's just sometimes the order at which we need to go about this is critical to be able to set the stage to tell the story about how we got there. But wait, there's more. Because marketing does a lot more than pipeline and lead and account stuff. And that stuff actually matters too. So let's take this one step further. I'm not going to unpack all of the North Star examples, but I want to hit on one more really quickly. Because again, if you're in a business where you need to be reselling or retaining your customers, I guarantee you the business has customer retention metrics. I would be interested, and I would challenge you guys to think about how often is marketing talking about these things. But you absolutely have a seat at the table here, and you should be. So if you have an objective about improving customer retention at a business level, I guarantee you that means your customer success team has CSAT goals, NRR, which is net revenue retention, and GRR, which is gross revenue retention goals. And if that's the case, think about how you could be applying marketing principles and all the wonderful tech stack that you have and the skills that you have to support that metric. Perhaps that manifests into something like marketing supporting with the references program and building, adding referenceable customers, new peer reviews, an adoption program, perhaps. Maybe you need to help, maybe you're churning customers because they're not adopting your product as quickly or effectively. And your CSMs can't be everywhere all the time. There's a scaled opportunity here through marketing. Or are you guys running user groups? Maybe you need to be focusing on your user group participation. Okay. So choose the metrics that most closely align to the role that marketing plays in supporting these outcomes. And it looks something like this. All right, so keep going with this. Continue building out your full metrics that matter scorecard with this kind of cascading methodology. And then obviously, once you do this, you go through this exercise, you need to make sure that your stakeholders are aligned to this. Make sure that they know this is how we're measuring marketing and the impact. Because if you do this in secret, it doesn't count almost. So here's the approach I would recommend for how you get your stakeholders aligned to this. Okay, first of all, discuss the guiding principles and get buy-in. That sounds really, really obvious. You would be surprised how many marketers skip this step. I don't know if it's because it's intimidating or it feels like you don't have the time or others don't want to give you the attention or understand why you want to sit down and talk to them, but make this step happen. Okay, get them, talk about those guiding principles first. Then that sense of alignment is something that you can constantly go back to. You get them to agree to it, and then every time you're finding a struggle or you're getting pushback, you're like, no, we agreed to these. Like, you agree that you want your marketing team to act this way, to align to the guiding principles. Okay, well then this is what I need. Then you can share the metrics that matter and show how you got there. Show your work. This is the moment. If you remember from your elementary school days, it wasn't good enough to just, give the answer. You had to show your work. This is the moment for that. Okay. Demonstrate how you got from the top level goals all the way down to the marketing goals, and then have an honest conversation. And explain the methodology for contribution. Because if you just are doing that behind the scenes, if you just decide, you know what, the business has always talked about marketing source, I'm over that, I'm just going to start talking about contribution, they're not going to know what the heck that is. Like, this is an education, and it's also a change management process. And you better make sure the whole marketing team understand it first, because if the marketers don't understand it, you don't have a prayer of sticking the landing on making this transition or adding marketing contribution to the talk track into the metrics that matter. Then you need to create and share reports. You need to show those strategic and operational metrics and the performance to goal with trends over time. So you need to basically be able to say, here was the goal we all agreed to. Here's how we're doing. Here's how we're getting better or worse, and then why. And we're going to look into that again in a minute, in more detail in a minute. And then when you're having performance reviews within the marketing team, with your leadership, with sales, and I really hope you guys are having joint performance conversations with sales, talk about what's going well, what's not going well. Why do you think that is? And discuss together what you're going to do to address them. The more you can talk about these things together and keep being very transparent and bringing people back to, this is how we said we were going to do it. This is what we've done. This is now where we need to grow from. this is the benchmark. We go this way, we go that way. The better those conversations will be. Okay. So let's bring this full circle. What does a good QBR slide actually look like, Leslie? So I ragged on other people's QBR slides. I've had a QBR slide like that sometime in my career. What does good actually look like? Let's try something like this on for size. I think this is very beautiful. But I'm gonna take you through the anatomy of this and why I think this is the way to approach this. First, you will notice that there are only strategic and operational metrics on here. No tactical metrics in sight. None of that. No website visits. None. In general, you're not going to put tactical performance metrics on here. I've said it several times. I'm going to say it again. That is a marketing only conversation, and it belongs in a marketing QBR, not outside of marketing. Unless there's something really material happening in, where the sands are shifting under our feet and there's a bigger strategic implication to the business that people need to know about. Okay. Number 2, show the goal along with results for every single metric. This is my biggest pet peeve as a leader, is when somebody shows me a number against nothing. Is that good? I don't know. Like, don't make me guess. The next thing, show trends. Trends help people understand, is it getting better? Is it getting worse? And it roots you in actually being able to have a conversation about that. Trends also help you have conversations like, we're not where we need to be, but the trend line indicates that we're going to get there. Or it might say, hey, we thought that this was going to be, we would be able to maintain this level of lead volume or account engagement. And in actuality, there's a lot more volatility than we expected. Let's talk about why that is and what we're going to do to remediate against that reality or take the volatility out of the system. Always, always, always include written commentary. Do not ever give somebody a slide with data and leave it open to their interpretation, because their interpretation may be incorrect. Their interpretation might be based out of context. And frankly, why would you make them do the work? That's your job. Your job is to interpret the data and tell them what's important to pay attention to. Okay? And speaking of telling people what's important to pay attention to, even though you should consistently show the same metrics, that doesn't mean that every quarter, every time you talk about them, all metrics are really telling you something compelling and meaningful. So use number cues, use some form of cue to help people focus their attention on what matters most on this slide. And it might be different every time you present it. And then finally, anytime something is not going well, do not hide that fact. Don't put the data there but not comment on it. And certainly don't comment on it and then, be like, well, it sucks. Meh. You got to explain, what are we doing about it? Either explain why and or explain the remediation plan. And sometimes that remediation plan might be, we're still figuring this out. We're looking into it. We'll come back to you. That's okay, but it's better to say that than to say nothing, because somebody's going to notice it. I would hope they're going to notice a bad number. And if you don't call it out, it's going to erode trust. Okay. Equally, when something is going really well, explain the drivers of that strong performance and set expectations for the future. Maybe something like you blew something out of the water, but that's an anomaly and we're bring them back to earth. Or we tested a thing and it did really, really, really well. So now we're going to go cascade this change to all these other things. And we expect that will rise the tides in these other areas as well. Okay. All right. So big takeaways. Number 1, show how marketing works in a relatable way. Not relatable to marketing professionals, relatable to everybody who is not a marketing professional. And by the way, I'm sure that you all feel at some point in time that everybody thinks they're a marketer. They are not. Okay. So So translate to them. Number 2, define the unique role of marketing and the scope, and make sure when you define that your stakeholders agree. Like, yes, this is your role. This is what we expect marketing to do. This is the scope, what it includes. Align on the guiding principles. Like, you don't have to use these guiding principles. I just find that this milestone in the process, this step becomes so crucial as a grounding, because all you have to do when things start to go a little bit off the path of where you wanted to go, somebody starts trying to have a credit conversation. Nope, reel them right back. Hey, remember we agreed here. We're not having the credit conversation, and this is why. Remember, we all agreed that we're all targeting this same goal. Credit doesn't matter. Like, as long as we're working toward the same thing you're working toward, let's agree that what's good for business is good for all of us. Okay? Number 4, establish your methodology for measuring marketing contribution. I'm not here to tell you have to use that contribution model. I think it's a great model, and I think it helps you get a bigger picture and tell a broader story of marketing impact across all the things you're doing. Might not be relevant for your business, or your business might not be ready for that. But make sure that whatever the methodology is, that it is clearly documented and understood by everybody. Number 5, identify the strategic targets, then the operational KPIs, and how they cascade down from your top level business goals. Create reports that very succinctly and effectively show the marketing impact tied to the strategic and operational KPIs that you had agreed to. Number 7, and the last one, communicate what the business should expect from marketing. Okay? You own this. You should educate people and tell people what they should expect from you. By doing that, you are leaning in and taking accountability, which puts you into proactive mode rather than reactive, or even worse, defensive mode. Okay? Look, it probably feels like a lot, and that's because it is. It could be overwhelming to you, so you don't need to do all of this all at once. Baby step your way through it. Uh, but hopefully you see how this framework can be applied to your business, or at least pieces of it can. You're going to get a copy of these slides, I'm sure, from Nadia and the team. The deck is yours to use, to share. It's good for me and all marketers if we're able to educate our own stakeholders on things like this. And I'm hoping that you're going to walk away from this at least with some nuggets of goodness that you can pick up and use and feel empowered. And it looks like we're at time. So if you have any questions for me, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm absolutely happy to connect and talk marketing with anybody.